Good morning. This is the January 10th, 2021 meeting online of the Natural Rights Sangha. We're online because we have to be. We're all over the world. We have people in India, Japan, Europe, America, and try meeting in person every week, especially with COVID restrictions and without Star Trek technology. It's not going to happen. Although we members do meet whenever we can, when we're around, which is always a wonderful thing. This week was a very powerful one in America. Um, we witnessed things that actually I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. People incited by a president to run down to Congress and break in and be destructive, harm people, beat a policeman to death with a fire extinguisher. Um, 4 died, one from stroke of stress, I guess, one from being shot. She tried to break into Congress. I'm surprised more were not shot, actually, for the same reason. Um, Certainly, when I was in the military many years ago, my instructions would have had me shooting people breaking into that place. I'm surprised more weren't. A woman, ironically, who was running around with a sign saying, "Don't tread on me," got stomped to death by her fellows. And now her friend is trying to say Antifa stomped on her. Well, where was Antifa? Not one has been found there yet, despite claims otherwise. And what is Antifa? It doesn't exist. It's a combination of people who just don't like fascists. So if you don't like Antifa, by extrapolation, does that mean you like fascists? Um, the precepts are in stress right now. Let's just put it that way. Uh, Telling the truth and being non harmful to other living beings seem to be things that are in high demand, as in very much needed. Although, as I look at the people who were um, rioting and charging into the Capitol and doing all of these things, I do think that many of them believed what they were thinking. It wasn't like they were lying. They believed what they were thinking. Now, others were part of the 2% we've talked about before. Not the 2% of super rich, but the 2% of those who look for any excuse to be violent. Any cause, any excuse that they can join in on, it gives them an excuse to rape, pillage, destroy, murder. They're in. That's that. They'll join, because they just want an excuse, a cause to let them unleash probably the response to the damage that they themselves suffered when they were young, be it from a father, an uncle, a bad mother, whatever it was. And yes, you can find those reasons, but hopefully as adults, we work things through enough that we become a bit more reasonable. But again, 2% don't, at least until late in life, if they survive that long, which is a surprise, as I was trying to say. But I'm a bit somber this morning. I'm a bit sad for America. And America, as a symbol to the rest of the world, has utterly been tarnished the last few years. Yeah, it's an interesting time. A friend of mine who was in the army with me called me this week and said, "Mark, what would you and I have done if we had been on guard duty at the Capitol and this had happened?" And I said, "Well, looking at you and me back then, amigo, there would have been over 20 other dead protesters trying to come through the doors." Yeah. Now, what would I do now with the precepts imbibed in me the way they are as compared to how I was back then? I honestly don't know. There's so many hypotheticals there. Well, let us meditate and we'll go on to our regular meeting. So please set your timers for 10 or 15 minutes or however long you wish. And when we begin, please start them and then begin to meditate. When they go off, please turn the meeting back on. Okay, you can pause this until your meditation time is over. So, as usual, sitting up straight, relaxed, good posture, breathing through the nose, and just focusing on the inhalation and exhalation, letting thoughts go. One of the most important things, and it took me years to get, was the fact that our thoughts aren't ours. They come from outside. No, we can never control what thought's going to come next. No matter how much the Buddhists try, they can't control what's going to pop up. They can control very well their response to almost everything that pops up after your training, but they really can't control what pops up. The mind is not theirs to control in that way. Now, our response, yes, we can train over time. Okay, so on that note, let's begin to meditate. Okay, so please start your timer and turn this off. Oh, welcome back. Today, I'd like to continue a little bit more with some of the sayings of Ramana Maharshi that come from the Ramana Ashram book called Thus Spake Ramana. And and here they are. Okay. I'm laughing because we have two dogs here today, our dog and a visiting dog. And the visiting dog has puppy energy and is all crazy and wanting to wrestle around. In order to do the meeting, we had to put the one outside and leave the other in. And I'm hoping there won't be any barking or craziness while we're going for it here. So number 60 in Thus Spake Ramana from Sri Ramana Maharshi in 2002. You want to know the past, what you were, and also what you will be in the future. You do not know the present, and you exist now. Both yesterday and tomorrow are only with reference to today. Yesterday was called today in its time, and tomorrow will be called today by your tomorrow. Today is ever present. What is ever present is pure existence. It has no past or future. Why not try and find out the real nature of the present and ever-present existence. Words to this effect have been the recurring theme in every true spiritual teacher I have met. They all come back to the fact that only that which is ever present and non-changing is real. Anything which changes, even the whole cosmos, as it expands or contracts, physicists have debated this, as galaxies are born or die over millions and millions of years, as millions and millions of suns come into existence and go out of existence, let alone the many beings that are around them. All of that is ephemeral, no matter how long the time frame. The only thing that's real is that which is always present, non-changing. And that's what they call the self, all that is, the absolute. Sometimes consciousness with a capital C, self, of course, with a capital S. Some people have labeled it God, although then it tends to turn into something anthropomorphic like Zeus or Jehovah with a white beard or Odin riding a horse or Thor with a hammer or, Hercules with his club. All these things, all these things. Anthropomorphize something, they make it human when it's not. So that word is not as well in favor as the consciousness or the absolute or the capital S self. The divine is another way of saying it, but that leads towards confusion with God again. Buddha mind, the Buddhists say, but then they get in debates about whether there's the absolute or the nothingness, which is the core of everything. To me, that's like arguing how many angels dance on the head of a pin. Because really all we need to know is what is today and what is right now. And I know as I say them that even my concerns about what happened Wednesday in Washington, D.C., or what might happen tomorrow are bogus. They're part of the human condition that they show up, but to really focus and worry about them is a distraction of a sort. So let's go on to the next. While in fact the body is in the self, one who thinks that the self is within the insentient body is like one who considers the cloth of the screen which supports the movie to be contained within the movie. In other words, in this analogy, the movie screen is always there and the movies come and go. Who is it that says that I is not perceptible? Is there an ignorant I and an elusive I? Are there two I's in the same person? It is the mind that says that I is not perceptible. Where is that mind from? Know the mind. You will find it a myth. That's another way of expressing what I said earlier about our thoughts aren't ours. They come from outside. For years, I found myself to be bad or guilty or insufficient because after years of working on spiritual things and meditating and doing all this work and pilgrimages and everything I was doing at the time, I still had weird thoughts come to mind, improper thoughts. And you're like, oh, she's hot. Wow. Why am I thinking like that? Yeah, or whatever. And I blamed my quote self for it. Just acknowledging the thought and letting it go is not, there's no blame. And that took a long time for me to get. Next one. There is no difference between the mind and the self. The mind turned inward is the self. So looking in, you can see the self. You can acknowledge, you can be with the self. But if you're looking out, this all becomes the world. It's remember, the universe doesn't exist until you see it. When you're in deep sleep, it's not there. And then you open your eyes and consciousness of the small c shows up, but the big C is always there. But the individual consciousness is there, and he's like, and all of a sudden, all of that becomes real, and you're out there. And the other side just sits patiently, or not patiently, just sits, is always there. Not sitting, not sitting, just there. Boom. So I'll start again. There is no difference between the mind and the self. The mind turned inward is the self. Turned outwards, it becomes the ego and all the world. The cotton made into various clothes we call by various names, but all the clothes are cotton. The one is real, the many are mere names and forms. But the mind does not exist apart from the self, i.e., it has no independent existence. The self exists within the mind, never the mind without the self. Here, the analogy of cotton and being made into various types of clothes is used just like last week they talked about gold and gold being made into different types of jewelry, although it's still jewelry. So, what is the self? What is the self without being extrapolated into all sorts of outer forms and everything happening out there and the present and as compared to tomorrow and yesterday or whatever? Just what is the self? That was, who am I? Ramana's big question. He gave 10 types of lessons at least, but his main question was, who am I? For each of us to ask. All right. Please, with any questions, comments, or anything at all, please refer them to mark@naturalrightsangha.org, and I will be happy to respond either individually or possibly for the whole group. Other topics you would like to hear discussed, anything about the precepts, uh, please do, please do contact me. And in that regard, let's move to the last thing we do each meeting, which is the four immeasurables. And we'll start with we today. May we have happiness and the causes of happiness. May we be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May we never be separate from the happiness that is free of sorrow. May we reside in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. And last, let's do it for all living things, all sentient beings, for everything, for all that is. Let's do the four immeasurables, so called because they cannot be quantified. Let's do it for all. May all have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all never be separate from the happiness that is free of sorrow. May all reside in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. Thank you for being here with the Natural Right Sangha. Have a wonderful week. Best of fortune in your endeavors to keep the precepts, and blessings.